Okay, we are live. Hi, everyone. And as you can see from the topic today, we are going to discuss something really, really important and often ignored or kind of shied about topic, especially for all the women who are living with diabetes, with any type of diabetes, basically. And we'll be touching base on a lot of different topics, and we have a very special guest today evening, Dr. Ashwini. Thank you so much for joining us on a Sunday evening and sharing all your knowledge with us.
My pleasure.
Yeah. And I think we'll wait for a couple of minutes before we join the live. Start with our questions and our presentation. But for everyone who's joining us and who are new maybe to this platform, we are the Blue Circle Diabetes Foundation, and we conduct these workshops every Sunday at 5 p.m. These are free, open for all, and we discuss about a lot of topics that affect people living with diabetes. And today, under Project Gaia, which is Blue Circle's initiative for women's health and diabetes, we are doing this session on common gynecological concerns, issues, and we'll be going through all the questions that you may have or you may be afraid to go and talk to your doctor about. We will be covering topics on the general health. Conditions that women have, vitamin deficiency, menstruation, pre-menstruation, post-menstruation, and a couple of other topics as well. I think people are just joining in, and everyone who's joining in, you can add in your questions in the comments below, and we'll definitely try to answer them if time permits at the end of the session. And this is going to be a very generic discussion on overall women's health. And if you have any, and if you need any more consultation individually, we will be sharing Dr. Ashwini's details in the comments later on. But yeah, I think we can get started. I'll hand it over to Dr. Ashwini. Over to you.
A very good evening to all of you, and thank you so much for having me here. Today, we are going to talk a little bit about common gynec complaints and a little bit about overall women's health as well. Shall I share my presentation?
Sure, go ahead. So everyone who's joining us right now, they can type in their questions in the comments. We'll definitely take them at the end, and we'll start with our session now.
Yeah, is it visible, Snehal?
Yes, yes, it's visible.
Okay. So, now, firstly, we need to understand that there are different aspects of health. It's not just about physical health, it's also about mental and emotional health. And why does women's health draw so much attention? Now, basically, as women, we tend to put everyone else first and we tend to ignore ourselves. Sometimes there may be lack of awareness, and we are multitaskers. You can see or how we are juggling everything from home to office to children and the kitchen. And in all this, we definitely tend to ignore our health. Now, just to touch upon a few general issues, one is a vitamin B12 deficiency. Now, this is very, very common in pure vegetarians and vegans because the dietary sources include meat, eggs, and milk. And this can cause B12 deficiency, can cause a lot of fatigue, it can cause anemia, it can cause tingling in the feet, and it can be treated with tablets. In severe cases, injections may be required. Vitamin
So,
D3
doctor, just a
deficiency.
question on the B12 part.
Yeah.
And while we are on the B12 and D3 topic, as women who are living with diabetes, what should be the frequency of testing ourselves with for these two vitamin?
See, for B12, usually for most people, once a year is enough. I think since diabetes tends to affect nerves, maybe you could try testing twice a year, especially if you're vegetarian. I wouldn't worry so much about non vegetarians, although the deficiency can also be seen in them as well, because finally it depends
Right.
upon the absorption of the vitamin. But maybe you should test it a little more often than the normal population.
Okay, thank you.
Now, as far as D3 is concerned, this is another deficiency which is really rampant. Okay, the causes are not enough exposure to sunlight, not eating fatty fish. Fatty fish is the dietary source. And now this D3 deficiency has been linked to a lot of things, right from fatigue, muscle aches, pains, decrease in immunity. And the treatment is again medication, or in severe cases, injections. But just a word of caution here, D3 is different from B12 in that it is fat soluble. Okay, so D3 can get stored in your body, and you should not take it indiscriminately or without first doing a baseline level, because very high doses of D3 above 100 can be toxic as well. So I see patients taking this very indiscriminately of their own will, and please don't do that. Now, coming to anemia, this is a broad topic. I'm just going to touch upon it. The most common type is iron deficiency, and very often women develop this because of heavy bleeding during period, during childbearing. And again, apart from from a good diet, it can be corrected by tablets and injections in severe cases. Now, coming to the gynec part, when we say that your period is regular, okay, first to talk about your periods, how do you even know that your period is regular? Do you know what is the normal cycle length? Now, suppose someone comes to me and she's gotten a period in say 23 days. Is that normal? Or if someone comes and their period has come in 33 days, is that normal? So first we need to understand what is the normal length of your cycle. So the normal cycle length is 21 to 35 days. So if you get your period in 22, 23, 24 days, very likely that nothing is wrong. Similarly, if you get it in 31 or 32 days, you need not worry. But if your periods come before 21 days, you can say that they are too frequent. And if they come after 35 days, they are delayed or they are irregular. Now, these are some of the common menstrual complaints. Don't go by the fancy names. Now, basically, someone has jokingly said, that periods are like Mumbai rains, because if they are too heavy, it's a problem. If they are very scanty, also, it's a problem. If they're too frequent, we are unhappy. And if they don't come at all, also, we are worried. So, these complaints, basically, I'll run you through them. First is menorrhagia. Menorrhagia is nothing but heavy bleeding. I'm going to talk a little bit about it later. Hypomenorrhea means the periods come on time, but the bleeding is lesser than what you would expect. And this can happen if your thyroid hormone is high, if your prolactin is high. Prolactin is a hormone that's produced in the brain, and this is typically high during pregnancy and breastfeeding. So during these times, women don't get their periods, right? So sometimes even if you're not pregnant or you're not breastfeeding, prolactin can be high, and then it can cause you scanty or delayed periods. Sometimes even repeated procedures on the uterus, if you have undergone abortions repeatedly or DNCs repeatedly, can cause the uterine walls to stick, and that is called Asherman syndrome, and that also can cause scanty periods. And just one word, just to bring to your notice, that if you're taking oral contraceptive pills, your bleeding will always be lesser than a normal period, because that time you're bleeding under hormonal influence. So don't worry about that one. Now, coming to polymenorrhea, poly as in many. So when your period comes very often, more frequently, before 21 days, then it is called polymenorrhea. This can happen because of ovarian cysts. It can happen because of pelvic infections. And nowadays we see that people take I-pill very indiscriminately, and that again can cause the rhythm of your periods to go haywire. So when you take I-pills, uh, please do not use them all the time. They are an emergency contraceptive, and they should be taken only if your regular method fails, or if the intercourse has happened when you were not prepared. Also, eye pills are not foolproof. So please do not take them constantly. That's just a word of caution there. Now, oligomenorrhea means delayed periods, um, more than 35 days. The cycle length is more than that. The causes, most common cause is PCOS. We are going to talk about that later. Polycystic ovarian syndrome. It can again be because of raised prolactin, and even before the menopause, in the perimenopausal period, delayed periods are normal. Now, metrorrhagia means that your periods are coming on time, but in between the periods, you have some irregular spotting or bleeding. Now, that can happen sometimes if you have polyps, if you have fibroids, if you have infections, or even if there is an intrauterine device, then also you can have this sort of irregular spotting. Sometimes during your ovulation time, you can see spotting, which is quite normal. Dysmenorrhea is nothing but period pain. We'll talk a little bit about it later. As also premenstrual syndrome, I'll talk a little bit about it later. Now, menorrhagia, as I said, means heavy bleeding. So, how do you know that you are bleeding heavily? If your periods last anything more than 7 days, if you're having to use multiple pads at a time, because otherwise you might stain, you're having to wake up in the middle of the night just to change your pad, you are unable to do your normal daily routine because you're bleeding so heavily, and uh, if you pass clots, okay, so if you pass blood clots, that's a sure sign that you are bleeding heavily. Now, why does heavy bleeding occur? Now, it can occur because of a lot of conditions. We are not going to go into all, but just to tell you a few, dysfunctional uterine bleeding simply means that if you do your sonography, you will not see anything out of the ordinary in it. As in, you will not see fibroids, you will not see polyps, you will not see anything which is obviously causing you the heavy bleeding, but yet you're bleeding heavily. It is usually because of hormones. Intrauterine contraceptive device can cause heavy bleeding because finally it's a foreign body and it can irritate the lining of the uterus. Fibroids, it's a topic in itself. I will come to that later. The other conditions, don't worry. I mean, it's every condition is a topic in itself, but pelvic infections can cause heavy bleeding, polyps, adenomyosis, sometimes more ominous conditions like cancers of the lining of the uterus, blood thinners, everything can cause heavy bleeding. Now, coming to fibroids, I decided to talk about this separately because this is so common that you probably might have had fibroids yourself sometime, or you may at least know someone who has fibroids because they are actually that common. So, these are nothing but benign tumors which arise from the muscle layer of the uterus, and they vary in size right from microscopic to massive. I think the biggest fibroid I have seen was arising from the pelvis up to the upper abdomen here, below the ribs. So they can be that huge. And the location, the number of fibroids also varies. It can be single or it can be multiple. The location can be anywhere inside the uterine cavity. And as a thumb rule, closer the fibroid is to the cavity of the uterus, more are the symptoms. So if you see in the diagram, the submucosal fibroid means which is on the inner side pushing the lining is going to trouble you far more than that subserosal fibroid which is on the outer side. Now, how do you know you have fibroids? Very often they are picked up during a routine health checkup. You had no symptoms at all and you went and the sonography showed fibroids. That is very, very common. Or sometimes you could have heavy bleeding, you could have painful bleeding, you might have a lump in the abdomen if the fibroid is big. Sometimes the fibroids can interfere with fertility. They can also press on adjoining structures, cause pressure symptoms. So basically, they could range from asymptomatic to very symptomatic. And we don't treat all fibroids. So suppose you have a couple of fibroids which are 1 or 2 centimeters. You have noticed them during a routine sonography, and you don't have any symptoms. We may not touch them at all. So not all fibroids need treatment. We treat fibroids only in three conditions. One is if they are very big, if they are growing, or if they are symptomatic. And the treatment uh, basically can be just medications to decrease the blood flow during your period, and it sometimes a surgery could be required, in which case we either remove only the fibroids, or if the pathology is bad, you are well above 40 and your family is complete, we can actually even sometimes remove the uterus as a whole also. So the treatment will depend on your age, and your desire for further childbearing. Uh, but either way, we can treat it through keyhole. So we can do it laparoscopically or with the robot, and the recovery is excellent. Just take a second.
Yeah, sure. And before we move ahead, doctor, I think a lot of the times one question that always pops up when we talk about periods
Hmm.
is it okay to take the hormonal pill to kind of delay the periods? Like, because if you have some religious festival or something, and like women usually just take over the counter medication to kind of just delay it for 2 3 days. So how safe or unsafe is that?
Taking the medication to delay or to adjust your menstrual cycle is really no problem at all. But I'm not so happy about taking it over the counter and self
Mhm.
medicating. I would
Yeah.
say consult your gynac, and you can very well do it. There is no harm.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, coming to premenstrual syndrome, this happens in the 10 days before the period, and this is because of hormonal changes. So, typically, you might feel very bloated, you might feel like you've put on weight because of that, you might have breast soreness and tenderness. There may be mood swings, lot of irritability. You find yourself snapping at your partner, at your colleagues for no rhyme or reason. You may feel tired, want to stay in bed all day, have no interest in work, want to eat all wrong things, binge eating, sugar cravings. All these are because of hormones. And uh, what I would like to say here is there are a few natural remedies. One is eating root vegetables such as carrots, beets, uh, dark chocolate. I'm sure we all love dark chocolate. Premenstrually, there's a craving. It always helps. That's because of cacao. Healthy nuts like walnuts, fatty fish, broccoli, berries, all these are natural remedies for PMS. There are, of course, medications. And one thing I would definitely say that would help you is cut down on added salt intake in the 10 days prior to your period. So when you cut down on added salt in the form of, say, papads, pickles,
Hmm.
processed foods, chips, all these are extremely high in salt, and they will cause water retention and make all your symptoms worse. So in the second half of your cycle, be sure to avoid added salt. Normal salt is always okay. And in severe cases, of course, we have medications, and also some women have it so bad that we actually need to give mild antidepressants. They can need that as well. It is so bad. Now, coming to dysmenorrhea or period pain, um, now this is actually very common. It is so common that it's almost a normal part and parcel of your period on the first and second days. However, if it is very severe to the extent that it incapacitates you, you are unable to carry out your normal activities, and you are just confined to bed, then it is definitely something that requires treatment. Now, period pain can be primary or secondary. Primary means that it's just there, it is because of the hormonal changes, and because of the release of one substance called prostaglandin, which makes the uterus contract. And secondary means that it is secondary to some other condition. So it could be secondary to fibroids or to adenomyosis or to a loop, I mean, an intrauterine device. So it is secondary to another cause, like an infection. And either way, this can be distressing. The natural treatment, the home remedies that you could try are hot water baths, a warm shower, few stretches like the cobra pose, cow pose, and cat pose, a diet which is rich in good fats. Okay, then again, your cacao, dark chocolate, nuts, lean meats, eggs. So, a Mediterranean sort of diet can help you. And in severe cases, we have tablets, we have got injections even for dysmenorrhea. If it is a secondary cause, you obviously need to treat the reason. Now, coming to polycystic ovarian syndrome.
Doctor, I'll just take 2 3 questions before we move on to the next big topic here.
Yeah.
So Nishta is asking, is there any other way to avoid water retention and bloating apart from reducing the intake of salt? Because
Not
women
really.
usually, like before your periods, you usually feel.
Yeah, but that water retention is because the progesterone hormone rises in that time, and progesterone is what causes the water retention. So there is basically retention because of hormones in the first place. What we can do is to avoid an external cause.
Right,
We
right,
will
got
anyway
it.
have the retention.
Yeah, thanks. So I think that just comes as a part and parcel of having your
Yeah,
menses.
unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, there's another question from Ashlesha. She's asking, how long does it take for the clots in your ovaries to dissolve on its own with just good habits and exercise without the need for medication?
Clots in the ovaries, as in, sorry, I didn't get the question. You
We were
mean in
talking
the
about, yeah, like the fibroids section. Is it possible to kind of have healthy good habits and exercise for it to go away on its own, or
The
it
fibroids, you mean? The
yeah,
fibroids?
yeah.
No, we can't make them go away on their own. They are hormone dependent tumors, and they can increase up to the menopause, and they will shrink naturally after that because the hormonal levels drop.
Okay, thank you. That was
There's
that
nothing
was
that we can do. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think that is always a misconception, because online you see a lot of this ads that talk about, like reverse this and like cure this and everything, and people usually want quick fixes for everything. So rather than consulting an actual doctor who's going to help you with a long-term solution, people usually fall for this scams, and then in worse, it worsens their health, like rather than improving it. So I think that is very important for
Sure.
you to reiterate on like you have to, like, these are hormone dependent, like doctor said, and like always consult your gynac or always consult your doctor regarding any kind of gynac issues that you feel you may be having. And another common thing is, like, you touch base upon the emotional and mental health aspect. I think we as women are like generally a little scared to kind of consult a doctor in case of anything related to women's health. Period pain, women usually just feel like it's okay to have them. Even if it is worse, they will not consult a doctor. So just my suggestion to all the women out there, especially who are living with diabetes, to always consult your doctor. Don't feel shy, because you have to take care of your own health. And I think we all know the importance of, like, meeting your doctor and taking the medications as per their recommendation, and not over the counter medication that people usually just suggest, or through the WhatsApp school. Do not fall for those kind of scams, and always consult your doctor for any kind of medication. Do not self medicate.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. In fact, for fibroids, there are certain other modalities of treatment, like a high intensity focused ultrasound. People have tried that uh, to help shrink the fibroid. And there are certain injections which can bring down your hormonal levels to shrink the fibroid to some extent. But I don't want to go into that. And it is
Yeah,
not side effect free either. It's like causing a temporary artificial menopause.
right.
So, and not again, not everyone needs treatment. But coming
Yeah.
back to your question, there's nothing we can do in our lifestyle that's going to prevent it.
Okay. Thank you, doctor. I think we can continue ahead.
Okay. Now, coming to this topic, which is highly rampant nowadays, polycystic ovarian syndrome. Without exaggeration, I can say that every single day in my OPD, I see at least one patient of PCOS. I mean, I'm really not exaggerating here. It is that common. And basically, in PCOS, what happens is that on one side you can see this diagram. There is a uterus, cervix, fallopian tubes, and ovaries. On one side there's a healthy ovary, and on the other side you see a polycystic ovary. So in the polycystic ovary, you see all those multiple cysts which are there, and that is because when these follicles start growing, none of them reach that 18 to 20 millimeter size to release the egg. So they often become just fluid filled cysts in the ovary, and poly as in many and cystic as in fluid filled. So, because the ovulation has not happened, you may not get your next period. You may have a lot of hormonal hormonal side effects. You can have weight gain. You can have acne. You can have extra hair on the upper lip, chin,
Yeah.
and the body. You can have loss of scalp hair, and you can have trouble conceiving. Now, polycystic ovarian syndrome is a more severe form of polycystic ovarian disease. PCOD is more about the immature eggs. Okay, at the most you may have irregular periods, difficulty in conceiving, but PCOS is a metabolic syndrome. Okay, it is not just about not ovulating or having all these symptoms. You have more insulin in your body, but you are resistant to the insulin, and you have more androgens, more male hormones in the body as well. So in PCOS, it can make your diabetes worse. It can women can actually develop type 2 diabetes later in life. In very severe cases, even endometrial carcinoma may develop later. And if you see the sonography picture, you can see all these black circles all along the periphery of the ovary, like a necklace of pearls. That is how the polycystic ovarian picture looks on the sonography. Now, the sad part here is that the causes are, of course, genetic. If your mother or your sister had PCOS, very likely that you also could have it. But the sad part, as I was saying, was it's not only genetic. It is a lifestyle disease, very much a lifestyle disease. And there are so many environmental factors which are in our control, but somehow they are not being looked at. Not sleeping on time, eating wrong, sedentary lifestyle, high stress levels, very high stress levels, are unable to manage that, which causes inflammation in the body. So all these environmental factors is a result of a very bad lifestyle, and that can make PCOS worse. So we cannot blame only genes for that. Very often we ourselves are to blame as well. Staying up late into the night, binge watching OTT, Netflix, Amazon, chatting, scrolling social media. Then you are hungry at 12 in the night, so you have Zomato, Swiggy, just order something. This is absolutely not to be done, because this is only going to make your health worse. Okay, and as far as treatment is concerned, unfortunately, there is no medication made ever which can get rid of PCOD per se. So the treatment is all symptomatic. If you have irregular periods, we treat that. If you have extra hair, we treat that. So on and so forth. If you want to conceive, we give you something for that. So how does something change? What can actually change is if you change the internal milieu of your body composition, bring your fat percentage to the right level. Not just about weight loss. Your body composition has to be correct, because the female hormones are stored in the fat cells of the body. So unless you lose fat and build muscle, you may or may not benefit from this. So it's literally like having cough, cold, fever. If I give you paracetamol, your fever will come down, but till the time you have cough and cold, it's going to come back, right? So same with PCOS, we cannot get rid of the root cause. We are doing only symptomatic treatment. So unless you do something that changes your lifestyle and your body composition, nothing is going to change. You can require treatment forever. Very often we see that after one childbirth, the condition might be suppressed at least for a while. Sometimes it may go away as well, but otherwise we cannot make it go away. It is literally in your hands. Okay, so please delete those food apps today itself.
Thank you, doctor, for highlighting that, because nowadays it's become so easy to get everything at your doorsteps, like, and
Absolutely.
that can be very harmful. And I'm also guilty as charged, because I love, like, staying awake till very late in the night, and just binge watching on series and stuff like that. And you don't realize it now, but as you grow older, you start seeing the effects of all those bad habits that you had in your 20s. I have just entered my 30s now, so I can feel that, like, all the changes and stuff. So what doctor said, I'm just reiterating that, is as women, especially with living with diabetes, I think it's important for us to kind of take care of our health, eat right, sleep on time. That is also important. And always, like, if you have any issues, you should consult your doctor for any kind of help or support that you need.
Also, one more thing is that I always advise my patients to lose weight gradually, just
Yeah.
half kg a week, so maybe just 2 kilos a month. But don't yo-yo with your weight.
Yeah.
Don't do anything drastic which is going to make you lose 5 and 10 kgs a month, and then again you put back, again you lose. Don't get into that. It should be a steady downward graph. You took time to put on, give yourself time to lose. So
Right.
whenever you adapt any lifestyle change, ask yourself, do I see myself doing this after 6 months? If you can't, don't do it, because your
Yeah.
weight will yo-yo. It's as
Right.
simple as that. You love rice and you're suddenly going to leave it one day. No, after 2 days, you're going to forget what I said and just eat double. So don't do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, doctor, for highlighting that.
Now, coming to white discharge, see, the thing is, during the different phases of the cycle, some amount of discharge is normal. So, after the period, the discharge isn't much. That is called the follicular phase. During the ovulation, naturally there is more discharge. There is more wetness, and this is all nature's way of aiding fertilization. Before the period, the discharge can become thicker, scantier, and uh, so this is the normal discharge in the different phases of the cycle. How do you know that your discharge is abnormal? If you have so much so that you require to use a panty liner, if it is associated with itching or with odor, in these three cases you definitely need to show a doctor, because this is infective, most probably. Okay, and especially in ladies who live with diabetes, if your sugars are high, then you're very prone to vaginal infections. The vagina normally also has millions of microorganisms. It doesn't take much to acquire a vaginal infection. And as I said, when the sugars are high or uncontrolled, you will be very prone to these infections. Now, a few simple things that you could do to take care is to always wear cotton underclothes, keep parts dry. Okay, so after you come back from your workout or from outside and you're sweating, most women, they will do 10 things around the house before they head to the shower or change. Okay, you are going to do 10 jobs around the house. Don't do all that. Change out of your clothes, of your sweaty clothes, or at least head for a shower if possible. When you go to pass urine, please do not use a jet every time. It is not required. And dab dry with a tissue. When you are drying yourself, always wipe from front back, don't go from back front. These are some basic precautions that you could use to prevent the chances of a vaginal infection. And the treatment, of course, your doctor will decide based on what sort of infection it is. Very often they are mixed infections, so your doctor will cover you with an antifungal, antibiotic,
Yeah.
like a mixed sort of medication protocol, as well as treat your partner also, because otherwise the infection will keep going back and forth. Now, cervical cancer is a very common cancer in India, but we are not going to talk so much about that right now. I want to tell you more about the prevention. Okay, so cervical cancer vaccine is actually nothing but a vaccine against human papilloma virus, which is one of the main positive agents of cervical cancer. And of course, there are many different serotypes of human papilloma virus, of which HPV 16 and 18 are the most troublesome. And the vaccine is taken between 9 and 45 years of age. Earlier the better. Between 9 and 15 years, only 2 doses are required, and after that 3 doses are required over 6 months. The efficacy of the vaccine goes down after 26 years of age, so please take it before that if possible, and before the first sexual encounter it's best, because otherwise, you could already be exposed to HPV even before you take the vaccine. Now, the injection is given on the deltoid, on the arm, and there are no major side effects. There could be a bit of redness, soreness, slight fever, or slight pain, like with any other vaccine. There are different brands in the market. Your doctor will guide you, and you can choose whichever brand you want. But definitely do get vaccinated. Do vaccinate your daughters as well. It is really something we can prevent this sort of cancer. So why not?
And for women who have already maybe passed the age of 25 and not taken their vaccine, do they need to have some considerations in place, or they can just go and consult a doctor and get the
No,
vaccine?
they can take. See, the thing is, uh, the vaccine can be taken up to 45. The
Hmm.
efficacy decreases after 26.
Okay.
So, what you can, one way is, of course, to test yourself for HPV, which can be done while doing a pap smear. But I would say that there's no harm taking the vaccine anyway, because there are so many serotypes. Even if you are exposed to some, maybe the vaccine will give you immunity against the others. So there is,
Right.
how much it will help you later is anyone's guess, but then it won't at least harm you. So at least
Right.
why not?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
So while we're on the topic of cervical cancer, I just a little bit about Pap smear. Pap smear is a cancer screening test. It is an OPD procedure, and it's really very simple. Your gynec will just do it as part of the checkup. So there is one instrument called the speculum, which we insert in the vagina, and then there is a swab which collects cells from the cervical area, and then that is sent for this to the pathologist for checkup. Now the swab itself is not at all painful. The speculum is slightly uncomfortable because we stretch the vaginal walls in order to see the cervix, but really it takes a few seconds. So please do get a pap smear done once a year. Not just women above 40, anyone who's sexually active, I think, would benefit from doing a pap smear once a year. In the US and all, they start as early as 18 years, actually. Now, coming to menopause. Menopause means when your periods stop completely for 1 year. Okay, then we can say that you're menopausal, and it happens because the ovaries stop working. Now, every woman is born with a fixed supply of eggs in the ovary from birth, and when we start menstruating, the eggs are used up every month, and eventually they are all used up, and the store is over. So then the ovaries stop working, and then the menopause happens. Sometimes it can be a surgical menopause. You could have your uterus removed, and therefore your periods may stop. Okay, so the average age of menopause is 45 to 55 years. Again, there's a genetic predisposition. Whatever age your mother or your older sister got menopause would be the age at which you get your menopause, or at the age at which you can expect yours. But even before menopause actually happens, for a few years prior, that period is called the perimenopause, during which the hormonal changes have already started. Okay, and you could experience a few symptoms even earlier, and the periods may go irregular. Now, there are only three patterns of normal menopause. One is that the periods are coming regularly and one fine day they stop. Second is periods are coming on time, but the quantity goes on decreasing and then they stop. And third is periods get more and more late and then eventually they stop. But bleeding heavily during menopause, though it is common because of hormonal changes, it is not normal. So you please see your doctor if you bleed very heavily, because most women think it's all right. Okay, and as I said, it's common, but you should seek treatment for that. Now, the symptoms of menopause include hot flushes, irritability, tendency to weight gain. There can be a 3% decrease in your bone mass every year in your bone density. So, at this time, we always advise strength training and anti gravity exercises. Then there can be a bit of vaginal dryness, memory lapses, fatigue, tendency to depression, anxiety, libido may decrease. So, all these are because of the lowering of estrogen and progesterone, mainly estrogen. Now, the tests after menopause, every year you should take a pap smear, you should take a sonography, and you should take a mammography. I'll tell you about the other two now. Pap smear, I've already told you. And again, you should know that once you have the menopause, you should never ever see any bleeding again. So, postmenopausal bleeding means your periods have stopped completely for 1 year, and again you see bleeding. That is absolutely not normal. Please do not ignore that. Immediately seek treatment if that should happen.
Yeah. And thank you for highlighting all of these points continuously, doctor, because I think we as women need to hear this a couple of times so that we accept this ourselves, and then we are open to like taking our first steps towards reaching out to a gynac. Because even I have seen a lot of women who are like very afraid, who are very scared, and like all those regular questions of what will my mother think, or what will, if anyone sees me at the gynac, what will they think, So I think it's your health, it's in your hands. So I think it's very, very important that you take charge. And if you feel there's any kind of discomfort, or if you want to take a general consultation from a gynac, please, please, please do so.
Yeah, I mean, once a year, just the way you celebrate your birthday, I think you should be doing your health checkup and all the necessary investigations, because it is, you could be missing out something important, something that is happening. So now, sonography of the pelvis, this is to be done once a year. If you are having your period still, you should take the sonography just after your period. That is the best time to take a pelvic sonography. And there are two types. One is transabdominal, like you can see in the diagram, where the sonography is done with the probe on the abdomen. And for this, you need to go on a full bladder. Okay, and your bladder should really be full, then they are able to see the uterus from above. A transvaginal sonography, there is a very small probe, they put a sterile cover and it is done through the vagina, like an internal checkup. It is quite comfortable, really. It is not painful, and it is actually more informative where the uterus is concerned, as well as you don't need to hold the urine. So as a gynac, I would always prefer a TVS or a transvaginal sonography. Unless you're very uncomfortable, that's the one you should be doing for the pelvis. Mammography, this is to pick up lumps which are not even felt by the hand. It's a very useful investigation, very unpopular investigation because it is a little uncomfortable. We don't recommend this below 40 because there is X-ray exposure. Below 40, you could do what we call as a sonomammography, where there is an ultrasound done of the breast. Now that is based on sound waves, so there is no X-ray exposure. In this, the breast is compressed between two plates and X-rays are taken in different planes. And lumps which are not felt by the hand also are often picked up in this. So it is worth doing. Just one thing I forgot to tell you in the sonography, why it is so important to do it once a year, even more than the uterus and its lining, I would say it is important to do it for the ovaries. You have to realize that if our abdomen can hold a 9-month pregnant uterus, can you even imagine how big the ovary can become before you will even realize there's something wrong with it? Okay, so that is why ovarian tumors are very often picked up very late and they have a bad prognosis. That is because there is so much place inside that they may not cause you any symptoms. So when you do the sonography once a year, at least you are aware if there is a cyst or a lump or a mass, at least you know. Now, this breast self-examination, this is important for all ages. You should do this just after the period. When you're fully exposed, stand in front of the mirror, see that both the nipples are in the same line. They should not be inverted inside. Press and see that there is no discharge from the nipples. And then with the flat of the fingers like this, feel for any lump. Don't feel like this. If you feel like this with your fingers bent, you will feel lumps everywhere. Okay, so with the flat of your fingers, feel for any lump. Go either in concentric circles or go quadrant wise. You can go from the lower margin of the breast up to the collarbone on both the sides. Then raise one hand, with the other hand go right up to your armpit because the breast tissue goes still there. And similarly on the other side. This is something you should do every month just after your period, because before the period the breast might be, because of water retention, you may not be able to make out properly. So I would say that women's health, there should be a holistic approach, healthy balanced meals. It's okay to binge once in a while, it's okay to indulge once in a while, but it cannot be the norm. You have to exercise regularly. Um, Believe me, it's a priority. You can choose to make it a priority. You don't say that you don't have time. At least 4 to 5 times a week, you must exercise in some form or the other. If you can go to the gym, nothing like it, because you can build your muscles. Stress management, as I said, it's part and parcel of your life. You have to learn to deal with it. Whatever helps. Okay, it is. You could talk to friends. You could listen to music. You could seek therapy if required. Okay, but deal with it because it does you no good at all. Stress can also totally affect your periods, both the rhythm and amount, everything. Okay, now quit smoking. Smoking, as we know, is not good for us. Regular health checkups, as I mentioned. Make time for yourself. Only if you are healthy are you going to take care of everyone else at home. It's plain and simple. So you have to prioritize yourself. Pursue hobbies. This is more important for ladies. As you grow older, see your whole life, if you just focus on your husband, on your children, as your children grow up and leave home, you will suddenly find yourself facing the empty nest syndrome, where your husband is probably at the peak of his career, your children have left home, and you find that void. But if you have hobbies which you pursue, then you can always keep yourself engaged and happy. A strong friend circle, we all know the importance of that. And of course, sleep on time. So thank you, and maybe we can open for questions.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Doctor. It was quite informative, and you explained it very well in
Thank
terms of giving like correct examples, easy to understand examples. So I'm very grateful for that. And everyone who's listening to us, if you have any comment, just feel free to add them, and we'll try to pick them up. Um, in the meantime, I will ask a few questions to you, Doctor. So we touched base a little bit upon PCOS, PCOD, and the connection with type 2.
Right.
So what would be the probability, you would say, like if someone is like a woman is living with PCOS or PCOD, what is the probability of that being converting to a type 2? Is it always the case, or is it like, is there
No,
some probability around?
it is not always the case. You will have a tendency to it, uh, especially if you're not careful. But yeah, you are very much prone to it. I mean, I cannot give you an exact percentage, but not every case would get type 2 diabetes, but you are definitely at risk, especially in severe PCOS. And you have to be careful, and you have to decrease your carbohydrates. Whether or not you are type 2 diabetic, it doesn't matter. As I mentioned, there's insulin resistance. So your carb intake has to come down.
Yeah. And also, like, if I reverse the case, if someone is type 2, and the chances of them having PCOS or PCOD, like especially like after 35, so that is also Nishta's question here. So if I reverse the story.
So
Mhm.
I don't think type 2 diabetes is a risk factor for PCOS. It's the other way
Oh,
around, actually.
okay, okay, thank you for clarifying that, because a
Hmm.
lot of the women, they just feel like, oh, I have type 2, that's why I developed like PCOS or PCOD,
No,
and that.
but then they need to see firstly, is there a genetic factor? What is their
Mhm.
lifestyle like? Is their weight optimum? Okay, so PCOS can make the type 2 worse, but the type 2
Right.
is not going to make them have PCOS.
Right. Thank you for clarifying that. And another question is on the gestational diabetes part. So like a lot of the times, gestational diabetes usually converts to type 2 diabetes a couple of years down the line. So is it always the case, or is there like some chances
No,
around that?
it's not. See, pregnancy itself is a diabetogenic condition. So
Mm-hmm.
even women who do not have diabetes can develop gestational diabetes. And some percentage of that, some cases, it can continue. Very often after delivery, the sugars come down. Okay, since the cause was pregnancy, once the lady
Yeah.
delivers, very often the sugars will come down. But in some cases, it does carry on, but not every case will carry on.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. There's another question here is on the deficiencies that we talked about. Are these deficiencies common in all females or specific to women with with diabetes?
They are common in all females. They are common even in males, except that the
Mhm.
iron deficiency is probably more common in women. But D3 is common in everybody, I believe.
Everyone. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do these vitamin deficiencies show up in winters and cold temperatures more than the other seasons? Is there some seasonal correlation?
Not that I'm aware of. Because
Okay.
B12 is linked to diet, D3 is linked to
Yeah.
sunlight and a little
Right.
bit to diet. And iron again is linked to your diet and absorption. So I don't see why the weather should make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Another question from Noopur is, what advice would you give to young girls aged between 5 to 15 who might be in school, who are school going age, to avoid PCOS, because they're usually at the age where there's a lot of peer pressure, and like they have a lot of independent decisions to make, like ordering junk food or going to parties is the it thing to do, so what would be your
5 to
advice?
15 you are saying, right? So
Yeah.
then I wouldn't want to give them any advice. If at all, the advice is to the parents, yeah.
Mm.
Because how much are they going to know about, at 5 or 7 you cannot lecture a child about,
Yeah.
I mean, the parents have to ensure that there is the right food culture at home. From where are the children going to get junk food unless the parents provide it at that age? So
Right.
I think
Right.
they have to encourage their kids to play outside. Nowadays, we see that kids are just stuck to their mobile.
Yeah.
How many kids play down? Yeah, I think in our childhood we didn't have the phone, so we had. I mean, we were outdoors all the time, and now we see that so less. So I think just the normal childhood, yeah, without your phone is as healthy as it gets. So I would definitely tell the parents that give them phones late. Firstly, don't give them
Yeah.
phones very early. Encourage them to have normal activity in terms of playing outside with their friends. They need not go to gyms or something fancy. And as far as food is concerned, it's up to the parents to eat right themselves. Kids
Yeah.
learn by example, and to provide them the right food. Once in a while to indulge is okay. You don't want to be disciplined all the time, but you cannot make it a routine to, like, if they don't like the home food, they should not have the option of ordering a burger instead. That's what
Yeah.
I feel. I don't know.
No, that's absolutely right. I think coming from a woman who's also a doctor, because otherwise it's like a very easy option to just order, because everything is like just minutes away from you, and you
Yeah,
have
I
the,
mean,
yeah.
even the phones, I mean, it's a lot of effort to entertain a child, no?
Yeah.
It's easier to give the screen. So if you
True.
tell them you shouldn't be on your phone, then you should have the time to entertain them, no? So
Right.
it's the easier option. We cannot take easier options.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it may sound very easy to say like this, like eat right and exercise, and I know, like with all the lifestyle things that we have, sedentary lifestyle, and the easy availability of a lot of options, and the lack of time and stress, all of this takes a back seat, so like, I think with this session we would like really really like to highlight to all the women is to take care of their health, and however easy it may sound, just focus on like eating right, like doctor said, like reducing your carbs, eating more proteins, having adequate sleep. All of these are like very very important for you to take care of.
See, it's so simple. If you don't sleep well at night, your body releases cortisol. Cortisol raises
Mhm.
your sugar. Cortisol makes you store fat. Everything is that normal circadian rhythm is important. So if you do not sleep well or on time, you cannot lose weight easily.
Yeah, Nupur has also shared some information with us that, doctor, you yourself are an athlete and you have done triathlons. That's very very inspiring.
Thank you. I'm a recreational athlete, yeah, but yeah, I've done a couple of half Ironman because I enjoy exercising.
Wow.
I've always been
Wow,
that way.
that's very very inspiring, and like, yeah, and it's not just like walk. The doctor is like walking the talk, like walk the talk kind of a thing. She's not just here saying stuff; she's also doing it herself. So I think that's quite
Mhm.
an inspiration for every one of us to follow.
Thank you so
And yeah, yeah. And I think we have covered with almost all the questions that were there in the live. And if anyone else has any other questions, feel free to add them, and we will try to reply to them later. This video will also be saved on YouTube in case you want to check back on this again. And in the comments, we'll also put up details for Dr. Ashwini. If anyone wants to consult her personally for a consultation, that can be done here. And thank you so much, Dr. Ashwini, for joining us, taking time out on a Sunday evening, and for such an
much.
informative and a very well explained session.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And for everyone here, we will sign off now, and we'll see you next Sunday, same time, 5 p.m., with another interesting topic. Till then, do not forget to follow us on all social media handles. We are there on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, you name it, and we are there. So show us some love, and like and follow us there to stay tuned with all our upcoming updates. And with that, I'll sign off. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Bye bye.